Welcome to Stories for Sleep, a place where stories are not only meant to be heard, but to be felt, to be reflected upon, and sometimes to touch the quietest, deepest parts of the mind that we often forget during the day. Tonight, we step into a question that seems very simple. Where did water on Earth come from? But this is not only a scientific question. Through the lens of Carl Gustav Jung, water is also a symbol of the unconscious, of memory, of origin, and of who we are. So as you listen to this story, you are also gently discovering yourself. If you find that stories like this help you relax and sleep more deeply, you may take a quiet moment to subscribe to Stories for Sleep and continue this journey on the nights to come. Now, take a soft breath in, and we begin. Night falls, and as the world grows quieter, an old question begins to rise from somewhere deep within you. A question you may have heard before, but perhaps never truly paused to feel. Where did the water on Earth come from? You are living on a planet where most of the surface is covered by oceans. You drink water every day, touch it, see it, yet rarely ask, why is it here at all? Because if you look out into the vast universe, liquid water, something so familiar, is almost impossible. According to science, Earth should have been a dry, barren world, or a burning one, unable to hold even a single drop. And yet, a paradox appears. Not only is there water, but an endless ocean, an abundance that is difficult to explain. The blue paradox. The night deepens, and in the delicate space between two breaths, a strange feeling begins to spread. Not quite a thought, not quite an emotion, but something like a memory, one that has never been named. Let everything slow down. You do not need to understand. You do not need to imagine clearly. Just listen. Imagine you are drifting, weightless, directionless, light, like a dream just beginning to form. You leave the room, leave the city, leave everything familiar. And then you are there, in space. Before you is Earth, not as you see it on maps. No borders, no countries, no names, only a sphere. And the first thing you notice is not its shape, but its color. Blue, deep, still, almost endless. That blue does not simply cover the planet. It feels as though it is breathing, moving, carrying a rhythm, ancient, and somehow familiar. You look a little longer and begin to sense something strange. In a universe that is mostly cold, dry, where planets are often rock dust or ice, the existence of a world filled with water is not obvious. In fact, it almost should not happen at all. Liquid water requires a fragile balance. Not too hot, not too cold, not too close to a star, not too far. A slight shift, and water disappears, evaporates, freezes, and Earth exists right at the edge of that balance, a position so delicate that a small change could have erased all oceans before they ever began. And yet, they are here, not only present, but covering nearly everything, 70%. A number too large to feel accidental, a presence too strong to ignore. And here, a paradox begins. Why, in a place that should be dry, is there so much water? Why, in a universe governed by laws, does such an exception exist? And why, when you look at that blue, do you feel something close, something familiar? According to Carl Gustav Jung, water is not only physical, it is symbolic. In dreams, when you stand before the sea, or fall into water, or drift across a still lake, these are not random images. They are the language of the unconscious. Water represents what cannot be seen directly, what lies beneath thought, what exists below reason, what you do not control, yet always shapes you. And if that is true, then Earth covered in oceans is not only a planet, it is a living symbol, a vast image, reflecting the inner structure of the bride, human being. Because, like this planet, you are not only the planned surface. What you show to the world is only a small part. Most of you exists beneath, deep, quiet, not yet fully explored. Like the ocean, there are places where light has never reached, and within you, there are places where awareness has never entered. Old memories, unfelt emotions, unseen parts of yourself, and none of these disappear. They simply sink, becoming part of your inner ocean. Jung called this the collective unconscious, a depth shared by all human beings, a place where ancient symbols arise, where images repeat across time, and water is always there. The sea, rivers, rain, drops, appearing again and again in the deepest dreams, not by accident, but because, at some level, you remember, not with thought, but with feeling, a memory without words. And when you look at Earth from space and see that blue, perhaps you are not only seeing water, you are seeing yourself, a paradox, a being living in a world that appears logical, yet contains something beyond explanation. You think, yet you dream. You plan, yet you feel. You understand, yet something remains unspeakable. Like Earth, you too are an exception, not fully predictable, not entirely explainable, and perhaps that is what gives life its meaning. If everything were perfect, precise, calculable, there would be no space for emotion, no space for depth, no space for mystery. But water brings all of that. It does not hold shape. It adapts. It flows. It can be gentle or destructive, still like a lake, or fierce like a storm. And you are the same. Some days calm, some days chaotic, some moments clear, some moments uncertain. And none of this is a flaw. It is your nature, a nature like water. And perhaps that is why a planet filled with water could give rise to a being like you, not by accident, but by resonance, an outer world, reflecting an inner one. And as you lie here, listening, feeling your breath slow, perhaps you begin to notice you are not separate from this planet. You do not merely live on Earth. You are part of it, a fragment of the ocean, a drop of water that has learned to think. And perhaps the question, where does water come from, is only the beginning, a quiet doorway leading to something deeper. Where do you come from? And as that question settles, we continue, because this story has only just begun, a waterless Earth. And then, as the image of blue oceans fades from your mind, a space appears. No waves, no water, no soft blue covering everything. Only a question. If Earth today is filled with water, there was once a time when it had none at all. Go back, not thousands, not millions, but billions of years. Before rain, before seas, before anything you could call life, Earth was not a place you could easily imagine. No blue, no softness, no gentle movement, only fire, a newborn planet, unstable, restless. Its entire surface was molten, not streams, but an ocean of fire, boiling from within, endless, temperatures so high, nothing you know could survive. Rock melted, metal flowed, no stable structure, and if water somehow appeared, even for it could not remain. It would break apart, evaporate, be swept away by violent solar winds. No protection, no atmosphere, no place for water to stay. A planet unable to hold memory. And if you listen more deeply, you may sense this is not only physical, it is symbolic. According to Carl Gustav Jung, before a person can to reach their own depth, they must pass through a primordial state, a state he called chaos. No form, no order, no meaning, only energy, only undifferentiated movement. And before any hidden order appears, there must be chaos. Earth was that chaos, a planet unable to hold water, like a mind unable to hold feeling. There are times in life when everything comes and disappears immediately. You feel something, but cannot hold it. You experience emotion, but it fades before you can name it. Nothing remains. No inner ocean, only heat, raw energy, reaction. And perhaps you have been there too. A time when everything felt too fast, too intense. A time when nothing could be held. And yet, even in that state, there is a quiet promise that even in the driest place, even when nothing seems able to exist, there is still a possibility, an ocean not yet born. And perhaps what matters most is not how dry Earth once was, but why it did not remain that way. Because if it had, there would be no you, no story, no dream, no memory. So the question becomes, what broke the dryness? What brought water back? What transformed a lifeless world into a living one? Because after that silence, something happened. Not small, not gradual, a collision, powerful enough to change everything. And as you remain in that quiet space, that burning, waterless earth begins to feel closer. Not physically, but inwardly, because there have been moments when you too felt just as dry, not in the body, but within, a state where feeling no longer flows, where everything becomes rigid, fast, heated. You react, but do not feel. You think, but do not understand. Nothing stays. Like early Earth, everything appears and vanishes. And yet, even then, something deeper is forming quietly, preparing for the moment when everything will change, the fated collision. And then it happened. No warning, no sound, only a movement from very far away, drawing closer. In the darkness of the early universe, an ancient body moved silently. No intention, no awareness, only inertia. A massive form, born from the same cloud of dust at the same time, from the same story as Earth. And yet, it followed a different path. We call it Thea, but that name is only a way for the human mind to give shape to what cannot be fully understood. What matters is not the name, but the meeting. Two worlds that had never known each other, moving closer. No choice, no avoidance, only destiny. And if you listen very deeply, you may recognize that in your own life, there are moments like this. Moments you cannot turn back from, cannot stop. Things that happen not because you want them to, but because they must. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "There are no accidents in the psyche. Nothing is accidental in the deepest movements of the mind." And perhaps this is also true of the universe, because in that moment, as Thea came close, enough, gravity began to draw them together. No longer two separate bodies, but a system collapsing into itself. The distance closed. The speed increased. There was no way back. And then, impact. Not a gentle touch, not a contact, but a total destruction. The energy released was beyond anything you could dog. Imagine, Earth's surface was torn apart. Lava hurled into space. Layers of matter mixed together. No boundaries, no stable structure, only absolute chaos. And from that chaos, something strange began. Not immediately, but slowly. The fragments did not disappear. They orbited Earth. They collided. They gathered, gradually, forming something new. A satellite, the moon, the quiet presence you see each night. Soft, gentle, was born from one of the most violent moments in the planet's history. And if you pause for a moment, you may feel this is not only a physical event, it is a symbol, because sometimes what is most beautiful does not emerge from peace, but from rupture. Jung once said, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but before creation, there must be dissolution, a point where the old structure can no longer continue." And for Earth, that collision was that point. Everything before it was gone, not because it was weak, but because it was not enough. Not enough to hold water, not enough to sustain life. And so, it had to break. And if you listen gently, you may feel something very familiar, because in your own life, perhaps you too have known such collisions. Not physical, but emotional. An event, a loss, a change you did not choose. Moments when who you were before could no longer remain. And in that moment, everything seems to collapse. No meaning, no order, only chaos. But Jung believed that within such moments, something new begins to form, not immediately, not clearly, but inevitably, like the moon, which did not appear in the moment of impact, but was born from fragments, searching for a new order. And perhaps within you, there are fragments like that too, pieces of the past, memories, unfinished feelings, not gone, only waiting for a new way to exist. After the collision, after that impact, nothing remained as it was. No clear line between before and after, because everything had been erased, almost entirely. What was once surface no longer existed as surface. What was once structure was broken, and what once held could no longer hold. And if water had ever existed, now it was gone. No oceans, no clouds, no trace of softness. Only a molten world, a planet that had endured a shock so great it could not hold its own memory. And if you pause here, not to understand, but simply to feel, you may recognize this state exists within human life as well. There are experiences that do not only hurt, but take away your ability to hold. Not because you choose to forget, but because your inner system can no longer contain. Jung once wrote, "Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness." But sometimes that darkness is not a small part. It becomes everything. A period where nothing seems to remain, not because memory is gone, but because the connection to it is lost. Like water after the collision, not never existing, but no longer able to stay. And yet, even in that instability, something begins to change. Deep beneath the surface, Earth begins to Cool, not quickly, not visibly, but enough for possibility to return. Energy softens. Structure begins to settle, and with that, a new capacity emerges. The capacity to hold, but now, not as before, not as something untouched, but as something that has known destruction, and therefore can become deeper, like a human being after transformation. No longer the same, but not empty. Something new, unfinished, but full of potential. The cosmic rain. And then, from what once seemed empty, space, something begins again. Not violent, not sudden, no blinding light, no immediate destruction, only small movements, smaller bodies than Theia, but far more numerous. Many, many more. They do not arrive all at once. They fall, like rain, endlessly, for millions of years. Fragments of stone, dust of the cosmos, fall upon Earth. They collide, they break, they merge, and more continue to fall. From afar, it does not look like an event, but like a process, slow, yet unstoppable. Scientists call this period the late heavy bombardment, but for now, let the name fade, and simply feel a planet being touched again and again by the universe. Not one impact, but countless small ones, repeating without intention, yet carrying something, a possibility. And if you listen closely, you may recognize this is also how life changes, not through one great moment, but through small things, repeated. A conversation, a passing thought, a quiet experience. None of them alone seem important, but together they transform you, silently. And within those stones, something extraordinary was. Hidden, not all of them, but some carried water, not visible, not as drops, not as flow, but water held within mineral structures, hidden, almost invisible to the surface. And when they struck Earth, they did not only fall, they broke open. And in that moment, water was released, not in floods, only as vapor, tiny particles, rising, blending, remaining just a little longer than before. And over time, something changed, not suddenly, but irreversibly. The atmosphere thickened, the ability to hold water grew stronger, and a new possibility emerged, a door that had not existed before. And perhaps this is how you change too, not through a single decision, but through small moments that stay, a thought, a feeling, a memory, allowed to remain. And over time, they gather until one day you realize you have become someone new, not because of one event, but because of a process quiet, patient, and real. And Earth was becoming something new as well, no longer only fire, but a place beginning to hold water, not yet oceans, but the beginning of oceans. And perhaps this is the quiet truth within the story. Water did not simply arrive, it was released. From what seemed unrelated, from what seemed dry, and maybe within you, there are things like that too, not given from outside, but waiting to be revealed, to be allowed to exist, like water, hidden in stone, and slowly, over time, becoming an ocean. Water from stone. And as the cosmic rain continued, something slowly became clearer. Not everything that fell upon Earth carried the same meaning. Some impacts were only impact, but others carried something deeper, something you could not see at once, yet capable of changing everything. ancient meteorites held within them remarkable structures, not on their surface, but inside, within intricate mineral networks. Water did not exist as a free-flowing liquid. It was held, bound, hidden deep within crystalline forms. It did not flow. It did not move, like a memory, preserved across billions of summum years. And when these meteorites struck the Earth, they did not only break apart, they opened, releasing what had been held for so long, not in great streams, only as vapor, light, almost invisible, yet present, and more importantly, it remained just a little longer than before, because now Earth was no longer as it once had been. It had changed. After the collision with Theia, after millions of docking, years of bombardment, the structure of the planet had become different, more stable, more capable of holding. And in that meeting, between what came from outside and what had transformed within, something new began. Not immediately, not clearly, but irreversibly. A planet beginning to accumulate water, little by little. Each small impact, each quiet release. No miracle, no sudden moment, only the patience of time. And if you pause here, you may recognize this is how all depth is formed. Not through a single event, but through accumulation, small things, repeated, insignificant, when seen alone. But when they remain, they create depth. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." And perhaps each tiny drop of water, each seemingly insignificant impact carried meaning, not because it was large, but because it stayed. And over time, they connected, becoming something greater, like the experiences in your life, a small moment, a passing feeling, a quiet memory. If they are allowed to remain, they do not disappear. They accumulate silently until one day you realize you have become someone else, not because of one great event, but because thousands of small things were not lost. Earth was becoming another kind of planet, as, well, no longer a world of pure fire, but a place where water could begin to exist. Not yet oceans, but the beginning of oceans. And what is most intriguing is that those oceans were not poured down from somewhere above. They were built, grain by grain, from damp particles, wandering through the cosmos. A construction with no architect, no design, yet unfolding, slow, precise, and inevitable. And as you remain with that image, something begins to shift, not in what is falling, but in the planet itself. Because another question begins to arise, quiet but deep. If water can be brought from outside, does it need to come from outside at all? Or has it always been here, hidden deeper, not in meteorites, but within the Earth itself, like certain things within you, not given from the outside, but always present, waiting for a moment to be released? And as you stay with this image, something becomes clearer. Meteorites carrying water were not only sources, they were like keys, not creating water from nothing, but opening what had been locked. And if you look deeper still, you may realize this story is not only about matter, but about state. Water is not always water. It can be vapor, it can be ice, or held in forms you cannot recognize. Just as emotions do not always appear in familiar ways, they may become tension, emptiness, a vague feeling without a clear cause. not because they do not exist, but because they are in another state, a state not yet released. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And here, the unconscious is like water held within stone. It does not disappear. It simply has no clear form, untouchable, yet present, influencing, waiting. And what is needed is not to create it, but to release it. On the early Earth, those impacts were that process, not meaningless destruction, but opening, layer by layer, structure by structure, releasing what had been compressed for billions of time, years. And perhaps in your own life, there are moments like this, not always gentle, sometimes sudden, sometimes painful, but they open parts of you had never seen, an emotion you did not know you had, a memory you thought forgotten, a part of yourself never named, not because it did not exist, but because it was held, hidden, waiting for something strong enough to bring it into light. Earth was going through the same process, not only receiving water, but gradually opening what it had always held inside. Because when meteorites struck, they did not only release their own water, they stirred the Earth itself. Heat, pressure, movement, creating conditions where what had been deeply locked could begin to change, slowly. And here, a profound idea begins to emerge. Perhaps Earth's water did not come only from outside, but also from within, not as oceans, but as something locked, hidden within deep layers, within minerals, under immense pressure, not flowing, not evaporating, yet existing. And if this is true, then the story becomes deeper still, because it means Earth did not only receive water, it carried water within itself, only in another form, a form not yet released. Like you, there are parts within you, not created by experience, but always there, long before you noticed. Jung called this the self, not the ego you are aware of, but the whole of who you are, including what remains unknown, an ocean, not on the surface, but deep within. And the journey of a human being is not to search outside, but to slowly approach what has always been inside, like Earth, not only waiting for water from the growed cosmos, but gradually becoming a planet of water, not only because of what arrives, but because of what is released. And as you remain with this idea, a quiet realization may appear. Perhaps you are not missing what you seek. You have simply not yet touched it, not yet opened it, not yet allowed it to become part of your awareness, like water within the Earth, not absent, only hidden, only waiting. And from here, the story begins to turn. No longer only where does water come from, but how is it released? And what allowed Earth to begin breathing out its own water? And as you remain with that question, everything begins to connect. No longer separate stories, not from outside and from within, but one continuous flow. Meteorites still fall, small impacts still release water, and at the same time, within Earth, something is changing. Pressure, temperature, movement of layers, all creating a new condition, a state where what was once held can no longer remain held. And when that happens, water does not only arrive, it rises from within, not as a gentle stream, but as release, a pressure, long accumulated, finally finding its way out. And, if you listen deeply, you may feel this is not only geology, but a familiar image of the human mind, because there are things within you that cannot remain hidden forever, not because you decide to release them, but because they wish to be seen, to exist, to become part of awareness. Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists but will grow in size. What is held too long does not disappear. It gathers, builds pressure, until it must find a way out. And when it does, it may feel like an explosion, a strong emotion, a sudden shift, a moment after which you cannot return to who you were before. But if you look more deeply, it is not destruction, it is release. Earth was reaching that point too, no longer only receiving water, but becoming a source of it, not yet as you know it today, but in a more primordial form, unstable, not gentle, but real. And in that moment, a quiet truth is revealed. The oceans did not come from a single source, not only from the cosmos, not only from within the earth, but from their meeting between what arrives and what has always been, between impact and release, between accumulation and emergence. And perhaps this is also how a human being becomes whole, not only by learning from the outside, not only by looking within, but through the connection between both, a process that Jung called individuation, not becoming perfect, but becoming whole, holding both what you know and what you do not yet know, both light and shadow, both surface and the deep ocean within. And Earth was walking that same path, from dryness into a system capable of holding water, not only on its surface, but throughout its entire being, a planet beginning to breathe, not yet as you see it now, but moving toward it. And as you rest with this image, something gentle may arise, a feeling that everything is slowly becoming more complete, not all at once, not perfectly, but in the right direction. Like you do not need to arrive, only to continue, to allow, to hold, to open, and over time, something will form, an ocean, not only outside, but within you. Earth sweats. And then, as the rain that had lasted for millions of years began to soften, as water vapor no longer only rose and fell, something began to appear, not immediately, not clearly, but enough to sense that the earth had changed. Small bodies of water no longer disappeared completely. They remained, they connected, they expanded, and over time, something that had never existed before began to emerge. Oceans. But if you imagine the oceans as you know them today, blue, deep, peaceful, let that image go, because the first oceans were not like that. Not gentle, not clear, not safe, but something entirely unfamiliar. The water was not blue, but green, dark, heavy. It did not reflect the sky, because the sky was not clear. There was no soft blue, no bright light, only a thick atmosphere, dense and filled with vapor. Sunlight, passing through it, was no longer whole, but dim, faint, and when it touched the ocean, it did not shimmer. It spread as a muted glow across the flat surface. If you stood there, you would not see a sea as you know it. You would see a vast body of water, hot, almost without clear boundaries. The temperature was high, near boiling, not a place you could touch without harm. No sand, no gentle waves, no horizon you could recognize, only a massive body of water moving, slowly, within a very young world. And if you listen deeply, you may realize this is not only an ocean, it is a state, a primordial state, unstable, not yet gentle, yet filled with potential. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "The unconscious is not just evil by nature, it is also the source of the highest good." And this ocean is like the primordial, unconscious, not beautiful in the way you expect, not easy to understand, not safe, yet holding every possibility. Everything that would come later begins here. Life, biology, consciousness, all of it requires this environment to emerge. And yet, if you look only at the surface, it may seem harsh, even frightening. An unstable ocean, hot, opaque, with no life as you know it, no fish, no plants, nothing familiar, only chemistry, movement, reaction, and this may make you feel this is not a place for life, but in truth, this is where life begins. And if you pause for a moment, you may recognize within yourself there are oceans like this too, states, unclear, uncomfortable, unstable, emotions you do not wish to face, thoughts you cannot explain, inner conditions that do not feel safe. And yet, it is precisely there that something new can begin, not in what is already complete, but in what is still forming. Jung called this prima materia, the raw material, not beautiful, not perfect, but necessary. And if you are patient, if you do not turn away, then from those very places, something new will emerge. And the primordial ocean was waiting as well, not to become calm, but to become alive. And as you remain there, without rushing away, something else begins to appear, not on the surface, but within. Water was not only water, it carried other things, metals, minerals, especially iron. In the primordial ocean, iron did not rest within rock. It dissolved, moved through the water, changing its color, changing its nature, no longer clear, but heavy, opaque, alive in a different way. That green color was not the color of life as you know it, but of a system not yet complete, not yet balanced, not yet stable. And if you listen deeply, you may feel this is not only science, it is a symbol, because within the human unconscious, not everything is clear, not everything is transparent. There are parts clouded, difficult to understand, difficult to distinguish, not entirely good, not entirely bad. Jung called this the shadow, not something to eliminate, but something to understand. And in its primordial state, the shadow is not separate. It blends into everything, like iron in the ocean, impossible to remove, impossible to isolate, yet shaping the whole. And if you imagine yourself there, within a hot, dense, metal-filled ocean, you may feel there is no stability, no ground, no clear boundary, no place to stand. And this, too, is familiar, because there are moments in life when everything within you feels unclear, unstable, impossible to name. You do not know exactly what you feel. You do not know what is true. You do not know what is you. Everything blends, like the primordial ocean, and this may make you want to escape, to find clarity, to reach something more certain. But Jung believed that within this state, something essential is happening, a process he called integration, not removing what is unclear, but gradually recognizing it, differentiating it, and eventually bringing it together. But before that, there must be a phase where everything is not yet separate, not yet clear, not yet formed, and Earth was in that phase. No continents, no land, no boundary between sea and ground, only water everywhere. A planet almost entirely covered, no place to stand, no place to divide, no this side or that side, only a unified whole, not yet differentiated. And this is the first step of every complex system. Before structure, there must be mixture. Before distinction, there must be blending. Before clear consciousness, there must be vast unconsciousness. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And to make the darkness conscious, you must pass through it, remain within it. Allow yourself to experience it, not to be trapped, but to understand." The primordial ocean was not the destination. It was a phase, a foundation, a place where everything begins, not perfect, not balanced, but full of potential. And if you remain a little longer, you may feel something is shifting, not at the surface, but within the nature of the ocean itself. A movement, very slow, very subtle, yet inevitable, because even in the most primordial state, everything moves toward balance. And this ocean does too. And as you stay long enough, something changes again, not suddenly, not in a single moment, but as a gentle shift from chaos toward a faint order, not complete, but directional. Chemical reactions, no longer entirely random, they begin to repeat, finding familiar paths. Small patterns begin to form, not yet life, but the beginning of life. An ocean, no longer only an environment, but becoming a system, a place where elements do not merely coexist, but begin to interact in meaningful ways. And if you listen closely, this is a special moment, not because life has appeared, but because the conditions for life have been set. And that matters more than it seems, because in any process, the most important moment is not when the result appears, but when everything becomes ready. Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And the primordial ocean was a place of such meetings, between heat and minerals, between water and metal, between elements that had never known each other, yet upon contact, created something new, not immediately clear, but irreversible. Like within your own mind, when a new idea appears, it does not always change you at once, but if it remains, if it interacts, if it connects, then over time, it becomes part of you. And this ocean was becoming a kind of mind, not human, but capable of creating something new, a place that does not only exist, but begins to generate. And if you pause, you may feel a subtle shift, no longer pure chaos, no longer shapeless, but a system beginning to find itself. Like you, there are times in your life when everything within you feels unclear, unstable, impossible to understand. But if you stay, if you do not turn away, if you allow the process, then over time, something forms, clarity, understanding, a new order, not like before, but deeper, more real. And the primordial ocean was at that moment no longer just holding water, but preparing to give birth to life. And before life appears, another quality emerges, something very familiar, something you encounter every day, yet rarely notice: salt. Because the ocean is not only water, it is dissolved memory, the memory of rock, the memory of a planet, the memory of everything that has ever existed. And to understand this, we must look deeper into the sea itself, the rain that lasted millions of years. And then, as the primordial ocean grew more stable, as reactions within it began to repeat, something familiar quietly appeared. Salt, not obvious at first, not striking, but present, and over time, inseparable from the ocean itself. But water in itself is not salty. So where did that salt come from? To understand, return to something familiar. Rain, not the first rain, but the rains that continued after oceans had begun to form. These rains were not gentle, not pure. They carried something else. Acidity, the early atmosphere, filled with carbon dioxide and other gases, turned rain into a solution, reactive, capable of change. And when those drops fell, they did not merely touch, they dissolved. Rock, minerals, metals, slowly, relentlessly. What was once solid began to transform, not disappearing, but changing form, becoming part of the water, flowing toward the ocean. And over time, the ocean became more than water. It became water plus memory. Each mineral, each ion, each dissolved element, a fragment of the planet, carried into the sea. And if you listen deeply, this is not only geology, it is something familiar, because there are experiences that do not disappear. They no longer remain as they were, but they are not lost. They dissolve, becoming part of you, a memory, a feeling, a trace, not clearly visible, yet present. Jung once said, "We carry our past with us, but not always in ways we can see." The past does not always remain as images. It remains as influence, as tone, as a taste, in how you experience the world. Like salt in the ocean, you do not see it, but you know it is there. You feel it in every drop. And over time, the ocean grows more saline, not from one great event, but from a continuous process. Rain, dissolution, flow, accumulation, repeating for millions of years. And this creates an ocean, not only of water, but of memory, a vast archive, holding traces of everything that has been. And if you stay with this idea, something becomes clear. The ocean is not only water, it is memory, not human memory, but the memory of matter, of the planet, of time, and in some quiet way, of you. And as you remain with this, that the ocean is a kind of dissolved memory, something begins to open, not outside, but within you, because there are things you have lived that no longer exist as clear images. You cannot recall them fully, but they are not gone. They have changed state, from event to feeling, from experience to a subtle tone in the way you live, like salt in the sea, invisible yet present, shaping everything. And perhaps this is not loss, but depth, because what has dissolved into you is what makes you who you are now. Not perfect, but real. And somewhere within that ocean, something is beginning, very small, very fragile, yet irreversibly, a transition from matter to life. And to understand that, we must go deeper still, not to the surface, but below, where water meets heat, where rock meets motion, where everything begins, the primordial ocean. And then, as you leave the surface of the ocean, where everything is still blurred and in motion, you descend deeper, to a place where light no longer reaches, where everything becomes still, yet not lifeless. There, in near total darkness, something is happening. Not loud, not visible to the naked eye, yet one of the most important moments in the entire story. At the bottom of the ocean, where the Earth's crust is still thin, water seeps downward, touching regions of intense heat below. Heat, pressure, minerals, all converge within a very special space. And then, water does not simply flow, it reacts. At hydrothermal vents, hot water, rich in minerals, erupts back into the ocean, not like a gentle stream, but like dark plumes rising from the ocean floor, carrying elements, molecules, possibilities. If you were there, you would not see life. No fish, no plants, no familiar forms, only hot water, rock, and chemistry. Yet it is there that something begins. Not immediately, not clearly, but inevitably. Simple molecules begin to connect, forming more complex structures. No awareness, no intention, only reaction, repetition, accumulation, and over time, something very fragile begins to appear. Not life as you know it, but the beginning of life, a subtle boundary between matter and biology. And if you listen deeply, you may realize this is not only a scientific event, but a profound symbol of the human mind. Because there are things within you that do not begin with thought, not with consciousness, but from very small movements within the unconscious, connections you do not notice, ideas you did not create, yet they appear, feelings with no clear origin that slowly begin to carry meaning. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The unconscious is the womb of the creative. The unconscious is where things are born, not in the light, but in the dark, not in clarity, but in ambiguity. And that deep ocean is the planet's womb, a place without light, yet full of potential, a place without clear form, yet capable of creating form. And if you pause, you may feel a very particular stillness, not the stillness of emptiness, but the stillness before something is born, like the moment before an idea appears, before a feeling is named, before you understand something about yourself. And in that darkness, something is beginning, very small, very fragile, yet irreversibly. And within that deep space, something begins to change, not on a grand scale, no clear form, only molecules, tiny, almost insignificant, but no longer alone. In the water, they no longer drift past each other. Randomly, they begin to meet, remain close, just a little longer, interact. And in that interaction, something subtle occurs. Water is no longer just a medium. It becomes an organizer, without awareness, without intention. Yet, through its unique structure, it allows molecules to remain close enough, to connect, to react, to form new structures, not permanent, not fully stable, but enough to repeat. And when something can repeat, it begins to carry a form of order, a kind of memory, not conscious memory, but a tendency, a pattern to repeat itself. And if you listen closely, you may realize this is the first step of life. Not DNA, not cells, but the ability to maintain structure over time. Something that does not vanish immediately. Something that can remain. Like you, when a thought does not simply pass, but stays long enough to become part of you. Jung once wrote, "Consciousness grows out of an unconscious psyche which is older than it. Consciousness does not emerge from nothing. It grows from something deeper, something unclear, formless, yet capable of creating form. And the ocean is that ground, not only containing molecules, but allowing them to become something more. Water dissolves, but also connects. It allows substances to meet without dissolving completely. A very special state, not too separate, not too rigid, a state in between. And it is in that between that life begins, not in absolute stability, not in complete chaos, but at the boundary, where everything can change without disappearing. And if you pause, you may realize this is also where your deepest transformations occur. Not when you are in full control, not when you are completely lost, but when you are in between, a state of openness, a state of allowing different things to meet, to connect, to transform, and over time, to create something new, not immediately, not by force, but inevitably, just as in that deep ocean, small structures continue to form, a little more complex, a little more stable, able to last just a little longer. And little by little, a new boundary begins to appear, not clear, but real, between what is only matter and what is beginning to live. And as that boundary slowly sharpens, a new question arises. What allows these structures not only to exist, but to grow? What makes something so fragile become the foundation of all life that follows? Why is the sea salty as life begins to stir? As the ocean becomes more than water, but a cradle, a quiet question appears. Why? Water, not another liquid, not another medium, but water, a molecule so simple, you almost overlook it. 2 hydrogen atoms, 1 oxygen atom, H2O. Not complex, not remarkable at first glance, but if you pause and look deeper, you may realize water is not ordinary. It does not behave as you would expect. In the physical world, there are rules, clear tendencies, patterns that usually hold, but water is an exception. It does not behave like most molecules. It bends the rules, and because of that, it creates something no other molecule can: life. One of its most unusual qualities is how water molecules connect to each other, not through strong bonds, but through very weak ones, called hydrogen. Bonds, weak, temporary, easily broken, yet constantly reformed, endlessly. If you could look inside a drop of water, at the molecular level, you would not see a fixed structure, but a moving network, connecting and separating, repeating billions of times each second. Not stable, yet not chaotic, a state in between. And if you listen deeply, you may recognize this is very familiar, because you are not fixed either. You change. You connect with new ideas. You release old ones. You recreate yourself each day, not completely different, yet not exactly the same. Jung once wrote, "The psyche is a self-regulating system. The mind is not static. It is dynamic, always balancing, always adjusting, like water, not rigid like stone, not scattered like air, but existing in a state that allows movement while holding form. And that state is what makes life possible. And among all its strange qualities, there is one more, almost impossible, something that goes against nearly every rule. And without it, perhaps, you would not be here. When most substances freeze, they contract, become denser, heavier, and sink. But water does the opposite. When it freezes, it expands, becomes lighter, and floats. Ice floats on water, something so familiar, yet not ordinary at all. If water behaved like other substances, oceans would freeze from the bottom up. Everything would solidify. No movement, no flow, no life. But water chose differently. Ice rises, forming a protective layer, allowing liquid water below to remain, allowing life to continue. And perhaps this too is a quiet truth, that sometimes what does not follow the rules is what allows life to exist. And as you listen, you may begin to feel this is not only the story of water, but a gentle reminder that sometimes what seems different, what seems out of place, is exactly what sustains you. And as you see all of this, you may begin to understand the ocean is not still, not fixed, but part of something larger, a system, always moving, always exchanging, always becoming like you, not a fixed version, but a process, a flow, a cycle that never truly stops. And to understand that, we must go deeper still, not only into the ocean, but into the earth itself, where water does not simply flow, but travels through paths you cannot yet see. Water gives rise to life, as you no longer see the ocean as a still surface, but as a part of a greater flow. Another question begins to appear. Does water truly remain in the ocean, or is it moving in ways you cannot see? Because if you look only at the surface, you will see waves, wind, rain, familiar movements. But beneath, far below, there is another current, slower, more hidden, yet no less important. At places where tectonic plates meet, the ocean does not simply end, it descends. Water seeps into the crust, following fractures, going deeper into regions where pressure and temperature are unlike anything on the surface. And then, together with the rock, it is drawn downward into the mantle, not as a free-flowing stream, but as a part of structure. Water is no longer water as you know it. It is held, hidden within minerals, bound into rock, invisible, untouchable, yet still present. And if you pause for a moment, you may realize this is a very familiar image of the human mind, because there are experiences that do not disappear. They are no longer on the surface, no longer clear in consciousness, yet they are not gone. They descend, hidden in deeper layers, becoming part of the unconscious. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The unconscious is not a passive receptacle but a dynamic system." The unconscious is not a passive container, but a living system, a place where things continue to move, to transform, to interact, even when you are not aware. And water within the earth is the same. It does not disappear. It enters another cycle, a deeper one, slower, yet no less essential. Within the mantle, water influences how rock melts. It affects the movement of matter. It shapes the entire planet, not at the surface, but at the foundation. And if you listen carefully, you may feel a quiet truth. What you do not see is not absent. What you do not notice is not without influence. Like water, when it descends into the earth, it does not lose its role. It simply changes roles, from surface to foundation, from visible to hidden. And within you, there are movements like this. Memories, no longer clear. Emotions, no longer intense, yet still present, shaping how you see the world, how you respond, how you become yourself, not on the surface, but in depth. And then, After a long journey through darkness, water does not remain there forever. It is not trapped, because the cycle never stops. After descending, after becoming part of the deepest layers, water does not stay there forever, because nothing in this system is truly still. Within the mantle, temperature rises, pressure shifts, minerals begin to change, and in that process, water is released, not as a familiar flow, but as a separation, a transformation of state, from being held to becoming free again. And then it begins to rise, not quickly, not directly, but inevitably. Alongside magma, water moves through layers of rock, finding pathways, slowly, yet certainly, and eventually, it reaches the surface, once again, through volcanoes, through fractures, through places where the planet opens. And in that moment, water appears again, no longer hidden, but as vapor, as gas, as part of the atmosphere, returning to the cycle. If you watch long enough, you will see there is no clear beginning, no final end, only a circle, a flow, without interruption, from the surface, downward, from the depths, back to the surface. And if you listen deeply, you may realize this is not only a physical cycle, but a familiar pattern of the human mind, because there are things you cannot keep buried forever, not because you force them upward, but because they must rise. Jung once wrote, "There is no birth of consciousness without pain. The emergence of awareness is not always gentle, not always easy to understand, but it is a part of the process. What has been held, what has descended, will find its way to return, not in the same form, but in another shape, a new feeling, a new thought, a realization that could not exist without having first been deep. And in that moment, everything connects. What you have experienced, what you have forgotten, what you never understood, all becomes part of a single flow, not separate, not fragmented, but continuous, like water, not belonging to a single place, not only in the ocean, not only within the earth, but everywhere, in every state, in every phase. And if you pause, you may feel a quiet peace, that nothing within you is ever truly lost. It is only somewhere else, in another phase, in another part of yourself. And when you begin to see this, something gently shifts, not in the world, but in how you see it. Everything is no longer separate, no longer random, but becomes a system, a whole, a planet that does not simply have water, but is water, flowing, transforming, becoming. And then, as you see the entire journey, from rain to ocean, from ocean into the earth, from the earth back to the sky, something becomes clear. Water belongs nowhere. It does not stay in the ocean, not stay in the sky, not stay within the earth. It moves endlessly through every state, through every space, through time itself. And from this, a deeper truth emerges. The earth is not a collection of separate parts, but a system, a living whole, where everything connects. Everything influences everything else. Nothing stands alone. Water is not just a component. It is the flow that connects all, between sky and ground, between surface and depth, between past and present. And if you listen deeply, you may realize this is not only the story of a planet, but a principle, a way all living systems exist. Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Everything is connected. Nothing exists in isolation. No experience is completely separate. all are part of a larger network, and within you there is such a deep cycle. What you experience does not remain on the surface. It descends, transforms, becomes part of the unconscious, and then, over time, returns in another form, a new understanding, a new feeling, a new version of yourself, not separate, but continuous, not random, but meaningful. And as you begin to see this, something soft happens. You no longer feel that things within you are fragmented. You no longer feel that what has passed is lost, but that it is moving, becoming, participating in a cycle greater than you imagined, like water, never truly disappearing, only changing state, changing place, changing role, yet always there. And when you look outward into the vast universe, you might think the Earth is only a small planet, a tiny point in an infinite space. But if you look deeper, you may realize what makes Earth unique is not simply the presence of water, but how water exists here, not frozen completely, not hidden forever, but present on the surface, flowing, transforming, connecting, something very rare, perhaps extraordinarily rare. And to understand that, we must look further, beyond Earth, beyond the oceans, to other worlds, where water exists, but not like this. Water, the rule-breaking molecule. As you leave the Earth, as you look back from afar, something becomes clear. It is different, not because it is larger, not because of its size, but because of how water exists upon it. Because in the universe, water is not rare. It exists in many places, in clouds of gas, in comets, in distant moons, but how it exists is very different. Imagine a world like Europa, a moon of Jupiter, beneath tens of kilometers of ice. There may be a vast ocean, deep, wide, perhaps even carrying chemical reactions, similar to those once on Earth. Or Enceladus, a small moon of Saturn, where plumes of water erupt through icy surfaces, suggesting beneath another ocean, hidden, dark, enclosed. These oceans may exist, may move, may even hold the potential for life, but there is something very different. They are not open. They do not touch the sky. They do not meet the light. They are closed, covered, isolated. And if you listen deeply, you may realize this is not only a physical difference, but a profound symbol, because there are parts within you, like those oceans, deep, vast, full of potential, yet closed, unseen, disconnected from awareness. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What remains in the unconscious does not disappear. It continues to act, from the dark, unseen, ununderstood, like oceans beneath ice. They exist, but cannot fully become what they could be. And what makes Earth different is not simply that it has water, but that this water is open, not completely covered, not forever hidden, but in contact with air, with light, with cycles, an open system, a flow, unblocked. And perhaps within you there are also places that can open, not easily, not immediately, but possibly. And that makes all the difference between a system that merely exists and one that truly lives. And when you return from distant worlds, Europa, Enceladus, those silent frozen oceans, you return not only to Earth, but to yourself, Because in searching for water in the universe, you are also searching for yourself, not metaphorically, but deeply, because water is not only out there, it is within you. Your body is more than half water. Your blood carries a salinity, echoing ancient oceans. Every cell is not dry, but a small space filled with water, a miniature ocean. And if you pause, you may feel this is not only biology, but connection, a very deep thread between you and this planet. Jung once wrote, "We are not of today or of yesterday. We are of an immense age. You are not only of the present, you carry a long history, not only in memory, but in your body itself, in every drop of water within you. There is something ancient, not a memory you can name, but a feeling, a familiarity, difficult to explain. Perhaps that is why the sound of waves soothes you, why rain helps you sleep, why looking at water brings a quiet depth, as if you have been there before, not consciously, but in something older than thought, a part of the collective unconscious, where primordial images still live. Water is one of the oldest symbols. In dreams, in myths, in wordless feelings, it is not only water, it is beginning, birth, return. And when you look at the ocean, you are not only looking outward, you are also looking within, a part of you that has always been there, always connected, always belonging. And in that moment, the boundary between you and the world softens, not disappearing, but enough for you to feel you are not separate. You are a part of the flow, a part of the ocean, a part of the planet, not metaphorically, but truly. And as you sense that, a new question arises, not about the past, not about origins, but about the future. What will happen to this ocean? What will happen to water on this planet? And within you, the deep cycle of water, as you begin to feel that connection between yourself and the ocean, between the present and billions of years ago. Another question quietly appears. How long will this last? Will the ocean always be there? Or, like everything else, is it only a phase? Because if you look deeper, not only into the past, but into the future, you may begin to see a very quiet truth. The ocean is not eternal, not in the way you feel it today, not in the way it seems when you stand before and sense something endless, because very slowly, very gently, water is leaving the earth, not in great currents, not in visible upheavals, but one molecule at a time. High in the atmosphere, sunlight breaks apart water molecules. Hydrogen is light, so light that it escapes into space, gone, not returning, no longer part of the cycle. And this process has been unfolding for billions of years, very slowly, almost impossible to notice within a human life, yet across deep time, it matters. The earth is losing water, little by little, and if you listen deeply, you may feel this is not a catastrophe, not something to fear, but a part of a larger cycle, because nothing remains unchanged forever. No state endures eternally, even those that seem most constant. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness. Everything carries within it change, not to be lost, but to continue, to transform, to become something else. And the ocean is part of that process, not disappearing at once, not within a time you can see, But within the long flow of the universe, it is not an ending, but a moment, a phase in the journey of this planet. And if you pause, you may realize this is true for you as well. What you are holding, what you are feeling, what you are thinking is not permanent, not fixed. It, too, is changing, flowing, transforming, not to disappear, but to become something else, another version, another state. And then, as you look further still, not only at the present, but billions of years ahead, an image begins to form. No oceans, as you know them, no familiar currents, a different Earth, very different. As you look deeper still, not only at the slow loss of water, but at the source of energy that sustains this planet, the Sunday. It does not stand still. It is not unchanging, not forever, as it appears today. Very slowly, very steadily, the sun is growing hotter, not in a day, not in a lifetime, but across millions, billions of years. More light, more heat, and gradually, conditions on Earth begin to change. Not suddenly, no single moment, only temperature rising, slow yet continuous. And as this happens, the ocean begins to respond, not with waves, not with storms, but with disappearance. Water evaporates, no longer just part of a cycle, but becoming the dominant direction, more leaving than returning, less remaining than before. And over time, the ocean shrinks, not because it is taken, but because it becomes something else. Vapor, hidden in the atmosphere, and then, slowly, escaping into space, like what had already begun, but faster now, clearer, irreversible. And if you listen deeply, you may feel this is not a sudden ending, but a dissolving, a transformation from one form to another, from presence to no longer being here, yet not entirely gone, only no longer belonging to this place. Jung once wrote, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." Change is not something to resist, because it cannot be stopped. But when it is seen, when it is accepted, it becomes part of a process, not loss, but transformation. And the ocean is moving through that process, from liquid to vapor, from visible presence to invisibility, from here to no longer here. And if you pause, you may recognize this is not unfamiliar, because in your life, there are things like this, phases that do not end with a single event, but with a gradual fading, a feeling no longer as strong, a relationship no longer the same, a version of yourself that no longer exists, not taken away, but transformed into something else, a memory, an influence, a part of you, but not who you are now, like the ocean, not entirely gone, yet no longer existing in the way you once knew. And as this continues, a clearer image emerges, an earth without oceans, no vast waters reflecting the sky, no waves, no rain, no cycle, like the one you have followed since the beginning, only a dry surface, cracked, still, and very quiet. What was once ocean is no longer there, not destroyed, not erased, but gone elsewhere, transformed, escaped into space, or hidden in other forms, no longer present on the surface of this planet. And if you stood there, you would not recognize that this place was once a blue world, a world of water, a world of life. All becomes memory, not human memory, but the memory of the universe, a phase that has passed, Jung once wrote, "All life is flux, a ceaseless flowing. All life is flow. Nothing stands still. Nothing remains unchanged, even what seems most permanent. And the ocean is part of that flow, not a beginning, not an end, but a moment, a phase in the long journey of matter, becoming life and continuing to transform. And if you pause, you may feel this does not carry sadness. It is not loss, but completion, because each phase has its role. The ocean fulfilled its part. It nurtured life, created conditions, opened a possibility that had never existed before. And then, when that role is complete, it continues, not holding on, not remaining, simply becoming something else, another phase. And perhaps this is true for you as well. What you are living, what you are becoming, is not final, not a finished version, but part of a flow, a phase, a transition. And when you begin to see this, something softens. You no longer need to hold everything tightly, no longer need to make things last forever, because their value is not in endless duration, but in the fact that they existed, that they happened, that they became part of the whole. Like the ocean, no longer there, yet leaving traces in everything it once touched, in rock, in air, in life, and finally, in you. And in that quiet space, something else begins to appear, not about the future, not about endings, but about what once happened between ocean and land, what was submerged, what disappeared beneath the water. Stories, no longer on the surface, cosmic comparison. As you leave that distant future, as the image of a dry earth settles, you return, not to the present, but to the past. Not the past of water's beginning, but the past of what has vanished, because the ocean does not only create life, it also covers, consumes, preserves what once existed on the surface. If you look at a map today, you see continents, clear, stable, as if they had always been there. But if you look deeper, not with your eyes, but with time, you will see the surface of the earth is not fixed, not still, not loyal to its current form. It shifts, moves, sinks, and disappears. There are continents that once existed, once rose above the water, once were land, but now no longer on the surface. One of them is Zealandia, a continent almost entirely submerged beneath the cross Pacific Ocean, not completely gone, but no longer present. In a way you recognize. Only small fragments rise as islands. The rest lies beneath the water, hidden, quiet. And if you listen deeply, you may realize this is not only geology, but a symbol, because within you, there are continents like this, parts of you, once clear, once present in awareness, but now submerged, not gone, only no longer on the surface. Memories, experiences, former versions of yourself, no longer clearly present, yet still there, beneath the ocean of the unconscious. Jung once wrote, "The unconscious is the storehouse of memory and experience." The unconscious is not empty. It is a place that holds. Nothing is truly lost, only no longer seen, and the ocean does the same. It does not erase continents. It covers them, holds them, hides them, and over time, what was once clear becomes part of the depth, harder to reach, harder to understand, yet still shaping everything. And if you stay with that image, a quiet feeling emerges, that not everything that is lost is truly gone. Some things are simply waiting in another place, another depth, another time, not only ancient continents, not only vast lands now submerged, but also places where humans once lived, walked, built lives, but now no longer on the surface. Doggerland, a land that once connected Britain to Europe, not billions of years ago, but only thousands. There were forests, rivers, animals, and people. They lived, moved, built, as you live today. And then the waters rose, not suddenly, not a single great wave, but little by little, slowly, almost unnoticed, within a lifetime, yet over time, enough to change everything. Doggerland disappeared, not destroyed, not erased from existence, but submerged by the ocean. What was once land became seafloor. What was once a path became sediment. What was once life became memory. Not memory held by people, but memory held by the earth itself, in soil, in water, in the planet. And if you listen deeply, you may feel this is not unfamiliar, because within you there are doggerlands, phases of your life, once vivid, once alive, once meaningful, but now no longer on the surface. Not because they were unimportant, but because time has moved, circumstances have changed, the water level within you has risen, and what was once present has become past, submerged, hidden. Jung once wrote, "What is no longer conscious becomes fate. What leaves consciousness does not disappear. It continues in another way, hidden, quiet, influential, like Doggerland, no longer seen, yet still there, beneath the water, beneath layers of sediment, a part of structure, a part of history. And if you pause, you may realize this is not total loss, because what has sunk still shapes what remains. The seafloor is made from what was once land. The present is built from what has passed. And within you, the same is true. You are not only the present, you are the sum of everything that has been, what you remember, and what you have forgotten. Not all of it visible, but all of it present. And when you stay with that, a deep feeling arises that nothing you have lived is ever truly lost, only no longer where you can easily see it. And as you see all that has sunk, ancient continents, lands once alive, places once inhabited, something becomes clear. The ocean is not only water, it is a keeper, a place that holds, not as memory in words, not as stories, but as traces, in layers of sediment, in minerals, in the structures of the seafloor. Each layer is time, each depth is memory, not to be told, but to exist. And if you listen deeply, you may realize this is not only Earth's story, but a principle of life. Nothing is truly lost, only changed in place, changed in form, changed in how it exists. Jung once wrote, "Nothing is lost, everything is transformed." Nothing is lost, everything transforms. And the ocean is proof of that. It does not destroy history, it holds it, hides it, moves it from surface to depth, from consciousness to the unconscious. And within you, there is such an ocean, a place that holds what you have lived. Not all clear, not all easy to recall, but all present in how you feel, in how you respond, in how you become yourself, not as stories you tell, but as a foundation, a structure, a depth. And if you pause, you may feel this is not something to fear, not a darkness to avoid, but a part of you, a place that holds what you have been, so that you may become what you are and what you will be. And when you see the Earth, not just as a planet with water, but as a system that can hold, transform, renew, another image begins to emerge. No longer an inert object, but a body, a system with flow, with rhythm, with the ability to regulate itself, almost alive. And to understand that, we must begin to see the Earth in another way, not as a planet, but as a living being, water within us. As you look back at everything, water, flowing, continents sinking, memories being held, everything connected, a new image begins to form. The Earth is no longer like an object, no longer just rock, gas, and water, but something more like a body, not in the way you have hands or feet, but in a deeper sense, a system with flow, with exchange, with rhythm. The ocean is not only water, it is like blood circulating through the planet, carrying heat, carrying minerals, carrying life, never still, never separate, always moving. And the atmosphere is like lungs, inhaling, exhaling, exchanging gases, keeping the system in balance, not too hot, not too cold, a state that allows life to exist. And the magnetic field is like a form of protection, an invisible skin, shielding from radiation in space, keeping what is within from being broken apart. And if you listen deeply, you may realize this is not only a metaphor, but a way of seeing the Earth, not as something you stand on, but something you are within, a larger system, a whole, of which you are a part. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The self is not only the center but also the whole circumference, which embraces both conscious and unconscious." The self is not only a center, but the whole, including every part, conscious and unconscious, visible and hidden. And if you see the Earth this way, it too becomes a kind of self, not only the surface, not only what you see, but everything, from the molten core to the atmosphere, from the deep ocean to the clouds, a system that regulates itself, balances itself, not perfect, but alive, deeply alive. And if you pause, you may feel this is not unfamiliar, because within you there is a system like this. Not everything you feel is in consciousness. Not everything you think is under your control. There are currents moving beneath, processes you do not see, yet shaping everything you are, like the Earth. Not every movement is on the surface, but everything is connected. And as you begin to see this, a boundary begins to soften between you and the planet, not disappearing entirely, but enough for you to feel you are not outside. You are within a larger body, and that body is alive. And as you stay with that image, the Earth as a body, something deeper begins to appear. Not only flow, not only movement, but self-regulation. Because a living body does not only exist, it maintains itself. When temperature shifts, it responds. When one part is out of balance, other parts adjust. No central controller, no single voice giving orders, only a system that knows how to remain alive. And the Earth does this too, not with consciousness like yours, but in a subtle way. Temperature rises, clouds shift, oceans absorb heat, life adapts, the atmosphere changes. Not perfect, not immediate, but enough to keep the system from collapse. a dynamic balance, always changing, yet not falling into chaos. And if you listen deeply, you may realize this is not only a theory, it is something you already know, because within you, this is also happening. You do not think about your heart beating. You do not control every breath. You do not command each feeling to arise. And yet, it all continues, naturally, continuously. A system holding itself. Jung once wrote, "The psyche is a self-regulating system that maintains its equilibrium just as the body does. The mind, like the body, seeks balance, not always comfortable, not always as you expect, but in a way that allows you to continue. And the earth is the same, not always stable, not without change, but with a tendency toward sustaining life, a tendency toward balance. And if you pause, you may feel this brings a different sense. You are not living on a planet. You are living within a living system, a system continuously adjusting to sustain itself. And you are part of that adjustment, not separate, not outside, but participating in every action, in every thought, in every breath. And as you begin to see this, a new question arises. If the earth is a body, if it regulates itself, if everything is connected, then what are you within that body? As you stay with that question, if the earth is a body, then you are what? Not as a role, not as a name, but in the way you exist within that system. Imagine your own body, trillions of cells. No cell knows the whole. No cell controls everything, yet each cell has a function, a place, a small role, yet essential. And from these countless parts, a living whole emerges. Seen this way, human beings are like cells, not only of a single body, but of this planet. You live, you move, you interact, you affect your environment, and the environment affects you. No absolute boundary, no complete separation, only a network, a system, interwoven. Jung once wrote, "Individuation does not shut one out from the world, but gathers the world to oneself." To become yourself is not to withdraw from the pie world, but to connect more deeply with it, to understand you are not outside, but a part of the whole. And if you listen deeply, you may feel this is not an abstract idea, it is real. Every breath you take is air from this planet. Every drop of water in you was once part of the ocean. Every atom in your body has passed through countless forms. Nothing in you truly belongs only to you. And nothing in this planet is entirely separate from you. A connection, very real, very physical, very deep. And as you realize this, something begins to shift, not in the world, but in how you feel yourself within it. You are no longer an isolated being, living on the fide earth, but a part, living within it, like a cell, not on the body, but of the body, a part of it, not separate, not entirely independent, yet not meaningless, because each part contributes to the whole, and the whole exists through each part. And in that moment, the final boundary begins to dissolve between you and the earth, not completely gone, but enough for you to feel you do not merely live on this planet, you are part of it. And as you see it this way, something else begins to appear, not about the present, not about structure, but about a deeper connection still, between the water within you and the water of the planet, between your rhythm and the rhythm of the earth. The future earth will dry, and then, as the boundary between you and the earth softens. As you no longer see yourself as separate, something very quiet emerges. The water within you is not yours alone. It was not created only to exist in your body. It has been here long before you appeared. Perhaps a part of it was once the ancient ocean flowed through rivers that no longer exist, evaporated into clouds, fell as rain, passed through other beings, other forms of life, other ages. And now it is within you, not as something foreign, but as something deeply natural, deeply familiar. And if you pause and feel your body, you may realize you are not a dry being. You are a flow. Your blood is water in motion. Your cells are small spaces filled with fluid. Your brain functions within a medium, mostly water. And if you listen deeply, you may feel a very simple truth, yet a very deep one. You are not separate from the ocean. You are part of it. Jung once wrote, "We are like islands in the sea, separate on the surface but connected in the deep." You may feel separate, an individual, an island, but at depth you are connected, not only to others, but to all life and to the planet itself. The water within you is that bridge, not an idea, but a reality, a continuous flow, with no clear beginning, no final end, only movement, continuation, becoming. And if you remain a little longer, you may feel something familiar. When you hear rain, when you watch the waves, when you touch water, there is a feeling that needs no explanation, a calm, a return, not to a place, but to a state, a deep memory, not in thought, but in the body itself. And as you stay with that feeling, something else begins to open, not only a material connection, but a rhythm, because the earth does not simply exist. It pulses very gently, very steadily, like a very slow heartbeat, a frequency, always present, even if you do not hear it, do not see it, yet always there. And your brain also moves in rhythms, brain waves, tiny electrical oscillations, never still, never fixed, but changing with your state. When you are tense, they quicken. When you relax, they slow. And as you drift towards sleep, they deepen, slow, like a wave returning to the sea. And if you listen deeply, there are moments when your inner rhythm seems to align with something larger, not through thought, not through effort, but through feeling, a merging, a flowing with. Jung once wrote, "The unconscious is not just personal, it is also collective." The unconscious is not only yours, it connects between people, between you and what is beyond you. And perhaps these rhythms are part of that connection, not to measure, not to analyze, but to experience. You may have felt it, a quiet peace in the rhythm of waves, a sense that everything is in place, in the press, sound of rain, a state where thought slows, and you simply are. No need to do anything, no need to understand, just present. That is not accidental. It is a synchrony between your inner rhythm and the rhythm of the world, between your nervous system and the deep oscillations of this planet. And if you pause, you may feel this does not need to be scientifically precise to be true, because you have felt it in quiet moments, slow moments, real moments, when you stop trying to control, stop trying to understand, and simply allow yourself to be within the flow. Jung called this participation mystique, a state where the boundary between you and the world softens, not disappearing entirely, but enough for you to feel you are not separate. You are participating in something larger, a rhythm that does not begin with you, yet moves through you, and as you stay with that, a gentle understanding appears. You do not need to connect with the earth, because you have never been separate from it. And if you remain long enough with the flow of water, with the rhythm of the Besh planet, with the feeling that you are not separate, something very simple, yet very deep, emerges. You have never truly been outside the earth, not metaphorically, but in a very real sense, very physical, very present. The water within you was once the ocean. The air you breathe has passed through countless beings. The atoms in your body existed before the earth itself formed. No separate beginning, no absolute boundary, only continuation, a flow moving through everything. And you are a moment within that flow, not separate, not entirely independent, yet not meaningless, because each moment is a part of the whole. Jung once wrote, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know. Within you there is something connected to something greater, not through thought, not through intellect, but through presence, a part that has always known you belong, not to a place, but to the whole process, the whole system, the whole flow." And as you begin to feel this, something softens. You no longer need to search for your place in the world, because you are already within it, always. No effort required, no proof needed, only to notice. And in that moment, the original question, where did water on Earth come from, is no longer only scientific. It becomes another question. Where did you come from? And perhaps the answer is not a single beginning, but the whole journey, from cosmic dust to ocean to life to you, not separate, not random, but continuous. And if you listen closely, you may realize you are not only hearing a story, you are remembering. Water within us, refined version. As you look back at everything, water flowing, continents sinking, memories being held, everything connected, a new image begins to form. The earth is no longer like an object, no longer just rock, gas, and water, but something more like a body, not in the way you have hands or feet, but in a deeper sense, a system with flow, with exchange, with rhythm. The ocean is not only water, it is like blood flowing through the planet, carrying heat, carrying minerals, carrying life, never still, never separate, always moving. And the atmosphere is like lungs, inhaling, exhaling, exchanging gases, keeping the system in balance. Not too hot, not too cold, a state that allows life to exist. And the magnetic field is like a form of protection, an invisible skin, shielding from radiation in space, keeping what is within from being broken apart. And if you listen deeply, you may begin to realize this is not only a metaphor, but a way of seeing the earth, not as something you stand on, but something you are within, a larger system, a whole of which you are a part. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference, which embraces both conscious and unconscious." The self is not only a center, but the whole, including every part, conscious and unconscious, visible and hidden. And if you see the Earth this way, it too becomes a kind of self. Not only the surface, not only what you see, but everything, from the molten core to the atmosphere, from the deep ocean to the clouds, a system that regulates itself, balances itself, not perfect, but alive, deeply alive. And if you pause, you may feel this is not unfamiliar, because within you there is a system like this. Not everything you feel is in consciousness. Not everything you think is under your control. There are currents moving beneath, processes you do not see, yet shaping everything you are, like the Earth. Not every movement is on the surface, but everything is connected. And as you begin to see this, a boundary begins to soften between you and the planet, not disappearing entirely, but enough for you to feel you are not outside. You are within a larger body, and that body is alive.